Thank you for joining us here at TruthMadeEasy.com as we continue with our Apologetics Made Easy video training course. The title for this video is The Teleological Argument, Design of Life. We are working our way through our 5 points here in our 5-point hand illustration. Point 1 is God exists. 2, miracles are possible. 3, the New Testament's a good history book. 4, Jesus is God. And lastly, the Bible is the Word of God. We're presently on point 1, proving that God exists. We've been using for our text, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, and the 3 arguments included in the book used to prove God's existence, the cosmological, teleological, and moral law arguments. We've already completed the cosmological argument and are now covering the teleological argument, which has 2 parts. In our last video, we covered part 1, the design of the universe. In this video, we're going to be covering part 2, the design of life. As we learned in our last video, there are 2 possible causes for anything: intelligent causes or unintelligent natural causes. In that last video, we looked at 2 rock formations, the first being Mount Rushmore, which we determined to have an intelligent cause, humans who chiseled rock with tools, and the Grand Canyon, which was caused by natural laws, erosion and nature at work. We then asked the big question, does the Earth and our universe show evidence of design? And we discovered that there is indeed evidence, strong evidence for the Earth and universe's design, as we looked at 11 of the 122 anthropic constants that make it possible for human life to survive in the midst of the deadly conditions of space. We also saw that just like the golf ball, the Earth ball displays strong evidence for design. Since both have been designed, they both had to have a designer. Okay, let's get started now with the teleological argument for the design of life. As we do, we're going to ask ourselves, what caused life to begin on planet Earth? Was life caused by an intelligent being, or was life caused by nature and natural laws at work? Many today believe that all living things on our planet are the result of natural laws. This, of course, is the theory of evolution. Believers in this theory are often called Darwinists. According to this theory, life began on the very early Earth in a warm pond by spontaneous generation. This first life supposedly came from non-living chemicals. That's right, life, we're told, came from non-life all by itself. And that the one-celled creature, an amoeba-like creature, changed and evolved over time through slight successive changes to form all other living things. We're told that from this one-celled creature, and by the process of natural selection, came the fish, birds, dogs, snakes, trees, apes, humans, and every other living thing. Now, was God involved? No, says the Darwinist. Was there any intelligent guidance or intervention? No. Nature, natural laws alone, we're told, are responsible for all living things. Well, we're going to discover, however, that the evidence does not support evolution or natural laws creating life. Instead, there is strong evidence for an intelligent cause, that life was created by an intelligent being, God. Now, if there's any one word that you can take away from this video, it's the word message. It's a small word, but it packs a big punch. As we're going to discover in the slides ahead, there is a message inside the cell of living things. And it's a very complex design message that can only have been placed inside the cell by an intelligent being, a designer. On the subject of messages, a popular form of messaging today is text messaging. Here on this smartphone is a message received by a surfer who we'll call Glenn. The message reads, High surf advisory, East Shores Oahu till 6 p.m. Wednesday, North and West Shores Oahu till 6 p.m. Monday. Now, when Glenn got this message, he was fired up. Not only was his surf up, but this text message was telling him that the waves were going to be big, advisory level warning big. Ooh, he could hardly wait till morning. That night he and his friends played some Scrabble, and the whole time he kept daydreaming about those waves. Well, as you can expect, Glenn had a tough time sleeping that night. He was up before the alarm clock went off, brushed his teeth, scarfed down some chocolate milk and some donuts. He then went to grab his keys when he saw this on the table. Mow the lawn. Who put that there, he thought to himself. Did one of the guys play a trick on me last night after we played Scrabble? No, maybe the wind caused the drapes to knock over the Scrabble box, and the pieces just happened to spell out mow the lawn. Of course not, he realized. The wind and drapes can't spell out a message like mow the lawn. It must have been Dad. Glenn now remembered that he had promised his dad that he would mow the lawn. Rats! Not today. Not today with the surf up, he thought. I gotta go. With that, he grabbed his bodyboard and stuff and headed off to one of his favorite surf breaks, Sandy Beach. Glenn arrived there just as the sun was coming up, but as he pulled up to the beach, his heart sunk. The high surf had not materialized as predicted. Bummed, he walked down to the shoreline to his regular spot gas chambers near the rocks. He looked around, but his friend Art was nowhere to be seen, nor was his car. Well, I guess Art slept in, Glenn thought to himself. It was just then that he noticed what appeared to be words written in the sand near the water's edge. He couldn't read the words from where he was standing. It was early and his eyes were still a little blurry, but as he got closer, the words came into focus. Surf's up at Makapu. Who wrote that, he wondered. Was it the waves or sand crabs? No, waves can't do that. Sea crabs can't write words. I bet it was Art. He's fooling with me. He must have beat me here and wrote that message. Pumped up now with the realization that there might be some waves after all, Glenn hopped in his car and headed down the road to Makapu to join his buddy Art. Now, how did Glenn know that nature didn't write that message in the sand? Maybe it was the wind, waves, or sand crabs. After all, he didn't see the message being written, did he? So how did he know for sure that nature wasn't at work there? Well, Glenn knew this because he had never observed or heard of nature writing letters like this in the past. Glenn had only seen people, intelligent beings, write words to form messages. So he just knew that this message had to have an intelligent cause. Same thing with the Scrabble game. I'm sure you came to the same conclusion as Glenn. Like Glenn, you instinctively know that natural laws, wind, blowing the drapes, and knocking over the Scrabble box, don't create intelligent messages like mow the lawn. Why? Because repeated observations tell us that only intelligent beings create intelligent messages and that natural laws never do. Now, what would you think if you heard a biology teacher in high school or college teach his or her students that a very simple message like surf's up at Makapu was the result of natural laws at work? You'd think they were kidding. That message clearly has an intelligent cause. Yet what's being taught in many high schools and colleges today is that complex messages, far more complex than surf's up at Makapu, complex messages are being found inside DNA within the cells of living things, and according to many biology teachers, they are not the result of intelligence. Instead, they are the result of natural laws. This teaching fits with what we looked at earlier, the theory of evolution and the belief that there was no intelligence involved, only natural laws. Now, we're not going to be covering the topic of evolution in this video. However, we will have 2 bonus videos on the topic at the end of this course, after we have completed each of the 5 points here in our 5-point hand illustration, God exists, miracles, and so on. I do have a few slides from those bonus videos here that I'll share with you to kind of give you a taste for what we'll be covering. I believe you'll find these evolution videos to be very, very helpful. Even if you're a person who's not really into science and biology, someone in your family, someone at your work or school, someone you know likely believes in evolution. You owe it to yourself to check out these videos so you can better understand what evolution teaches. Depending on your science and evolution studies background, you may be surprised to learn about the many weaknesses of evolutionary theory. This theory of evolution, as you likely know, came about as a result of this man, Charles Darwin, who back in 1859 developed a theory and published it in a book called The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. Darwinism's impact on the scientific community and our culture is still felt today, over 150 years later. For many, Darwinistic evolution provided a scientific explanation for life as we know it, and to the delight of many, it eliminated the need for God. Well, despite what many may teach, there are many weaknesses with the theory of evolution. As we'll discover in our studies, the evidence for life on Earth better fits creationism and intelligent design. In the bonus videos that we'll have for you on evolution, we'll be talking about apes, DNA, skulls, and skeletons. We'll learn about the significant difference between macroevolution and what is known as microevolution. We'll also talk about genetic limits, visit this little guy, the Chihuahua and the Great Dane, and we'll also see how things just don't add up for natural selection as you study the evidence. And of course, we'll discuss the fossil record that we hear so much about. Now keep in mind this is just a tiny sampling of the many slides, images, and illustrations we'll be using. Again, those bonus evolution videos will be at the end of this Apologetics Made Easy course. Let's continue now with the teleological argument for the design of life, and talk a little bit about DNA and cells. As we do, we need to keep in mind that when Mr. Darwin was working with the theory of evolution, he and the biologists back then in the time of the 1800s, well, they were working with primitive microscopes compared to what we have today. Because of this, they were unaware of the amazing complexity found deep inside the simplest of cells. And just as astronomers and physicists are going deeper and deeper into space today with advanced telescopes, scientists today are seeing deeper and deeper into the tiny world of the cell with today's modern microscopes. And they are discovering and seeing things within the cell that scientists back in Darwin's day never even dreamed of. Things like DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, which, as Geisler and Turek point out in the book, was discovered back in 1959. DNA has become so well known from the news, TV crime shows, and movies. It's the chemical that encodes instructions for building and replicating all living things. This complex chemical, illustrated here in our slide, is like a ladder that has been twisted, and it contains what scientists call nitrogen bases: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, represented by the four letters there on the left, A, T, C, and G. Now don't worry about all the scientific stuff about nitrogen bases, etc. All you need to remember here, for the purpose of this course, are the four letters A, T, C, and G. What's interesting about these DNA letters is that they are similar to the letters of the English alphabet. Just as the English language has a 26-letter alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on, the four letters A, T, C, and G make up the four-letter DNA alphabet. And just as we can combine and arrange letters from our 26-letter alphabet in a specific order to create a message, combining the letters A, T, C, and G in a specific order creates a DNA message. Now, here's a bunch of random letters from the English alphabet. Can you read what it says? Of course not, because the letters are not arranged in a way that forms a word or sentence. But if we take these same letters and arrange them in a specific order, we get the words mow the lawn, which form a message. Same here. Again, these are just random letters from the English alphabet that have no real meaning. But arranged in a specific order, we have the words surfs up at Makapu, which form a message. One last example. Again, we have a bunch of random letters, but here we're using the letters from the four-letter DNA alphabet, the letters A, T, C, and G. Just like the English alphabet, when we take DNA letters and arrange them in a specific order, the technical term for this is specified complexity, we again see that a message is formed. A message that makes no sense to us, but to the cells which contain DNA, the specific order and arrangement of the A, T, C, and G, the adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, they form a very special message, a DNA message. It is these DNA messages that encode instructions for building and replicating all living things. Just as we send email messages, voice messages, and text messages, you can think of DNA as sending its own DNA messages with instructions to the cells of living things. Here we have a set of encyclopedias. And here, as we open one of the volumes, we find a blank page, which we'll use to illustrate the point that just as the English alphabet can be used to communicate a message and fill books using sentences, paragraphs, and chapters, the DNA language, like English, can contain a message and fill a book. Now, maybe you're wondering how we're able to compare letters from the English alphabet to letters from the DNA alphabet. Well, Norm Geisler and Frank Turek explain. Alphabets, and thus language itself, can be ultimately reduced to numbers. This is why the English alphabet is mathematically identical to the genetic alphabet of DNA, and why the comparison of cell information to encyclopedias is a one-to-one relationship rather than just an analogy. As we have seen, random letters that have not been arranged in a specific order are just that, letters with no real meaning. But when those same letters are intelligently arranged in a specific way, they communicate a message. Intelligently arrange lots and lots of letters, and we get sentences, chapters, and books. Intelligently arrange many books, and we have a complete set of encyclopedias. In the same way, the 4 DNA letters A, T, C, and G, when just laid out randomly, have no real meaning. But when they are intelligently arranged in a specific way, they create a complex message that is used to encode specific instructions for building and replicating all living things. For illustration purposes, let's pretend here that the message of the DNA that we see here on the screen, the sequence of the A, T, C, and G, well, let's say it's telling the cells to make baby blue eyes. This again is an example of what? Specified complexity. DNA letters arranged in a specific way to communicate a message, a complex message of instructions to living cells. Well, it's time now to visit the world of the amoeba. The amoeba, as you will recall from biology class, is a simple one-celled creature. Well, as we're about to see, Mr. Amoeba is not so simple after all. The amoeba is tiny. In fact, you can line up a couple hundred in an inch, as we see here on our ruler. But what's inside the amoeba? Well, what's inside is very big. In fact, inside just the nucleus is a message, a big message, containing the informational equivalent of not one set of encyclopedias, but 30 complete sets of encyclopedias. And the total amount of information within this entire one-cell creature is equivalent to 1,000 sets of encyclopedias. That's quite remarkable, isn't it? To find that much information inside the simplest of life forms. Well, if you thought that our little friend the amoeba contains a big message, wait till you see how much information is between your ears. For that, we visit Brain World. Carl Sagan tells us about the amount of information found within the human brain, and I quote, "The information content of the human brain, expressed in bits, is probably comparable to the total number of connection among the neurons, about 100 trillion bits. If written out in English, say, that information would fill some 20 million volumes, as many as in the world's largest libraries. The equivalent of 20 million books is inside the heads of every one of us. The brain is a very big place in a very small space. The neurochemistry of the brain is astonishingly busy, the circuitry of a machine more wonderful than any devised by humans." Wow! 20 million books worth of information is inside your head. Can you picture how many books that is? Well, imagine stepping into a 20,000-seat sports arena and stacking those books on each of the seats. Do you realize that you would be able to stack 1,000 books on each and every one of those 20,000 seats? 20 million books? That's a lot of information inside your brain. Think about it. You are a living, breathing, walking library on 2 feet. No wonder your head feels heavy sometimes. Now the big question is this: where did this 20 million book message come from? It must have come from an intelligent source, right? No, says the Darwinist. There was no intelligence involved. That message came purely from nature. Good old natural laws put that 20 million book message inside your brain. That doesn't sound quite right, does it? We've already seen that mow the lawn, a 3-word message, is not the product of natural laws. Intelligence was involved. And we also saw with the message surfs up at Makapu, a 4-word message. Intelligence was also involved. So when we come to Mr. Amoeba, a 1,000 encyclopedia sets message, we would expect that this was also the result of intelligence. But the Darwinist tells us once again that intelligence was not involved. This message is the product of nature. Same thing with Mr. Brain here. You gotta believe that something with that much information, a 20 million book library message, certainly had to have an intelligent source. Again, the Darwinist says no, it's natural laws. Yet common sense tells us that this doesn't make sense. If simple messages point to an intelligent cause, then surely the extraordinarily complex messages found inside the amoeba and the brain also point to an intelligent cause. Well, in wrapping up what we've learned about the teleological argument, design of life, we can clearly see that life has evidence of design. For contained within life is a message. For the simple amoeba, a message 1,000 complete sets of encyclopedias long, and for the human brain, a message 20 million books long. These are just two examples of specified complexity in living things, and yet they provide strong evidence of design. And if there's design, there must have been a designer. So who or what is this designer? What designer designed life here on planet Earth? Well, when you get right down to it, either someone designed life or no one designed life. Either the message found in life came from an intelligent designer or unintelligent natural laws did all the designing by itself. Which view do you think is more reasonable? Which view do you think requires more faith to believe? Well, that concludes our study on the teleological argument for both the universe and life. So far, we have covered the cosmological argument, which can be simplified to say if the universe had a beginning, it had to have a beginner, and the teleological argument, which tells us that both the universe and life show evidence of design. And if they have been designed, they had to have a designer. We have one last argument for the existence of God left to cover, the moral law argument, which we'll cover in our next video. Now, once we finish up the moral law argument, we're going to tie everything together and show how the characteristics of the beginner, designer, and moral lawgiver that we have been studying match the very characteristics of the God of the Bible. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting close. Up next, as promised, the moral law argument.